I remember every death, every silence that followed. But one of them never forgot. It stayed away. The fluorescent lights in the MIT Neurological Research Institute hummed their constant mechanical drone as Dr. Alina Marsh stared at the brain scan on her monitor, watching the final moment of consciousness fade like embers in winter wind. Patient 347, male, 72 years, glioblastoma. His neural activity had followed the expected pattern, the gradual dimming of the prefrontal cortex, the last desperate firing of synapse, and then nothing. Just the flat line of silence that she'd witnessed in hundreds of terminals. She should have felt the familiar detachment of scientific observation. She should have logged the data, archived the file, and moved on to the next. But something was different. Something had changed in her 3 weeks ago, and she couldn't explain it, not even herself. Alina rubbed her temple, fighting the pressure building behind her. The sensation had become constant, like her skull was small, contained what was growing inside. Memories that weren't. Deaths she'd never. She knew the exact moment Mrs. Catherine Rodriguez took her last breath in Boston General 7, room 412. Her daughter's hand clasped in hers, the taste of morphine on her tongue, the sensation of her heart simply forgetting how to. Alina had never met Catherine Rodriguez. She'd never stepped foot in room 412. Yet she remembered her death, crystalline clarity, could recall the pattern of shadow in the sea, the antiseptic smell mixed with lavender, the daughter's perfume. The final thought that drifted through Catherine's fading mind. I hope I watered the orb. How do you explain that to your colleague? How do you tell your research that you've somehow developed the ability to experience deaths you've never witnessed? Marcus would think she'd had a breakdown. Sarah would look at her with that careful, concernful reserve for fragile things about to shatter. And Dr. Cross, her mentor, would probably recommend immediate psychiatric evaluation and a sabbatical. She couldn't. Alina pulled up her private file, the ones she kept encrypted and hidden from the Institute server. 47 deaths in the past 3 weeks. She'd documented them all, cross-referenced with hospital record, obituary, morgue report. Every single one, every detail she remembered had happened exactly. The data didn't lie, even when it defied every principle of neuroscience she'd spent 50. But there was something else. Something that made her hands tremble as she scrolled the neural. Most of the deaths she remembered showed the same signature, specific cascade of electromagnetic activity in the final second, like a wave breaking on an invisible. It was beautiful in its consistency, this pattern of conscious dissolve, except for one, patient 0 in her private file. The first death she truly remembered, even though it had happened 26 years. Thomas, her twin brother, 12 years old, drowned in the lake behind their house, North Carolina, while she watched from the dock, frozen, unable to move, unable to scream, unable to do anything but witness as he slipped beneath the surface and never came back up. Thomas's death didn't follow the path. His neural signature, what she somehow remembered, what she could reconstruct from memories that should have been impossible for a 12-year-old girl to possess, showed something vertical instead of dispersing. His consciousness had compressed, like a star collapsing into a point of its density. And unlike the other death, unlike the gentle fading of Catherine Rodriguez or the sudden cessation of patient 347, Thomas's death present, active, watching. Elena's discreet. For just a fraction of a second, she could have sworn she saw a reflection that wasn't her own. Dark hair, wet and plastered, eyes opened aware. She blinked, and it was gone. Just her own haggard expression staring, dark circles under her eyes, skin pale and too many nights in the Dr. Marsh. Sarah's voice cut through spiraling thought. You're still here. It's almost midnight. Alina closed the files, muscle memory from weeks of hiding, just finishing up some analysis. But as Sarah's footsteps faded down the corridor, Alina opened the files again. Because she needed to understand. She needed to know why she remembered every death, every ending, every silence that followed. And most of all, she needed to know why one of them remembered. The nightmare came again, but it wasn't. Alina knew this with the same inexplicable certainty that she knew the death he'd never. She was standing on the dock, 12 years old, wearing the yellow sundress her mother had bought for the fall. The lake stretched out before her, mirror smooth in the afternoon. Thomas was in the water, his arms cutting through the surface with easy pay. He'd always been the stronger swimmer, the braver, the twin who dove headfirst into the world, while Alina watched from safe distance. But this time, she wasn't watching, she was Thomas. She felt the cool water against the burn in her muscles as she swam farther. She felt the sudden cramp that seized her left leg, the shock of pain that turned the water from friend to enemy in a single. She felt herself go under, the water closing over her head like a fist. And then she felt something impop. She felt herself watching from the dock and drowning in the lake simultaneously. Two perspectives, two sets of sensation, two conscious experiencing the same moment from different. Alina on the dock, frozen in terror, unable to move. Thomas in the water, struggling, sinking. But underneath both experiences, there was a third awareness, something that observed them both with detached curiosity, as if their twin perspectives were data points in an experiment it couldn't quite. Alina woke, gasping, her sheets tangled around her legs like water. The clock on her nightstand read 3:47. Of course, everything happened at 3:47. Catherine Rodriguez, the homeless man under the bridge in Somerville, the teenager who'd overdosed his college dorm, all of them at 3:07. She stumbled to her bathroom and splashed cold water face, avoiding her reflection. She'd started doing that 3 weeks ago, ever since she'd noticed that sometimes her eyes in the mirror too dark, too away, like someone else was looking out from behind. Marcus called it stress. Her therapist called it dissociation. Alina called it what it was. She was losing her mind, or discovering something that would make everyone she'd lost. The distinction hardly mattered. Her phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. A text from Sarah, loud. Now, you need to see. Alina checked the time. 4:15 a.m. Sarah was either earlier than usual or hadn't gone home. Alina threw on jeans and a sweater, grabbed her key, and drove through the empty Cambridge streets to MI. The campus looked different at this hour, liminal and strange, caught between night and morning. The kind of time when the boundaries and things, the kind of time when impossible things felt almost reason. Sarah was waiting in the lab, her face illuminated by the glow of multiple monitors. She looked up when Alina entered, and there was something in her expression that made Alina's stomach tighten. Fear, wonder, maybe both. I ran the algorithm you designed, Sarah said without preamble. The one for pattern recognition terminal neural. Alina nodded. She'd developed it 6 months before the death started, before everything changed. I fed it the data from the past, all the terminal cases we've monitored. Sarah's hands were shaking slightly. It found the main monitor filled with a complex visualization of neural patterns, hundreds of them color-coded and overlapping. Most were the familiar wave pattern Alina had documented, the cascade of conscious fading to silence. But scattered throughout the data were other patterns, inversion, concentration, 37 of them across 12, each one showing the same signature as Thomas's death. These patients, Alina whispered, moving closer. Do we have record? Name. Sarah pulled up the spreadsheet. I cross-referenced with hospital database 37. But here's the thing, Alina. They're all twin, every single one. And in each case, the surviving twin reported she paused, scrolling through medical, reported experiencing vivid memories of their twin's death, even when they weren't present. Some developed what doctors call phantom memory, or grief-induced hallucination. The lab suddenly felt too small, the air thin. Alina gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. That's not. But even as she said it, she knew it was. She knew it in the same way she knew that Catherine Rodriguez's last thought was about. That the homeless man in Somerville had hummed a lullaby. His mother sang to him 60. That the college student's final sensation was relief, not. She knew it because she was living proof. There's more, Sarah said quietly. I mapped the geographic distribution. A map of the United States appeared, red dots marking. Most were scattered random, but there was a cluster, a concentration of dots in Cambridge, Massachusetts. 30 of the 37 cases had occurred within a 50-mile radius. They're happening here, Alina breathed. Around us, around the. Sarah met her eye. Around you, Alina. The concentration started 3 months, right when you joined the Terminal Conscious Project. Before Alina responded, every monitor in the lab flickered simultaneously for exactly 3 seconds. Each screen displayed the same, a boy's face, dark, water streaming down, eyes open and staring directly at the camera, at her. Then the screens returned to normal, showing the data, the pattern, the proof. Sarah was already checking, looking for the malfunction, the virus, the rational explanation. But Alina just stood there, staring at the empty screen, feeling the pressure build behind her eyes again. Because she recognized she'd seen it every day for 12. She'd seen it in mirrors and photographs. She'd seen it disappear beneath the surface of a lake on a summer. And now, impossible, it was looking back at her from beyond death itself, as if to say, I never left. I've been here all along, waiting for you to find it. Alina didn't go home that morning. She couldn't. The thought of being alone in her apartment, with only her reflection for company, made her skin crawl. Instead, she sent Sarah home to get some rest and locked herself in her private office, a converted storage room at the end of the neurology where she'd spent countless nights analyzing data that no one else would understand. She pulled up the encrypted files again, but this time she went deeper, past the documented death, past the neural, into the archive she'd kept since childhood. Her mother had called them Elena's morbid journal, notebook filled with observations about death that no child. She'd started them 3 days after Thomas drowned, when she woke up knowing things she couldn't possibly know. That Mr. Henderson next door had died of a heart attack at 2:30. Pit the cardinal that hit their kitchen window had broken its last thought of sky. That the mouse caught in the trap in their basement had taken 47 seconds to die, each second an eternity of incomprehension. Her parents had taken her to therapy, child psychologist, grief counselor. They'd all said the same thing. Trauma manifests in strange ways. Children process loss different. She would grow out of it. But Alina hadn't grown. She'd just learned to hide it better. Learned to stop talking about the deaths she knew had happened before anyone else discovered the body. Learned to bury her observations in academic research. To channel her curse into a career studying the one thing she couldn't escape. The moment conscious end. Except now she knew it didn't end. Not for not for Thomas. Alina opened the oldest file, scanned pages from a notebook she'd kept 30, a year after. The handwriting shaky, the observations raw and unfinished. Thomas is still. I can feel him. Sometimes I turn around expecting to see him, but there's only empty space that Mum says it's normal to imagine the dead are still, but this isn't imagining. This He's trying to tell me something, but I don't know how to. She'd written those words 25 years, and they were still true. Perhaps more true now than ever. Her phone rang, shattering the silence. Marcus. She almost didn't answer, but guilt won over avoidance. Where are you? His voice was tight with concern. Sarah said, you found something in the data. Something about twins. Of course, Sarah had told him. They were colleague, friends, and he'd been in love with Sarah for years, even if he was too stubborn. I'm in my office. I'm fine. Marcus, you're not. You haven't been fine for weeks. He paused. I'm coming. We need. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in her door, holding 2 cups of coffee apiece. He looked tired, his usually meticulous appearance disheveled, his dark hair uncombed. He'd probably been at his own lab all night, working on his quantum conscious theory, the ones that most neuroscientists dismissed as science. Show me, he said simply, settling into the chair across from her desk. So she showed him everything. The deaths she remembered, the pattern, the 37 twin cases, the geographic cluster, the image that had appeared. She showed him Thomas's inverted neural signal, the consciousness that had concentrated instead. She expected skepticism, concern, maybe even fear. What she got was recognition. Marcus set down his coffee carefully, his hands steady despite the revelation that should have shattered any ration. Alina, I need to tell you something I should have mentioned when you first joined the Terminal Consciousness Project. He pulled out his phone and opened a research, one that had never been published, never been peer-reviewed. The author was Dr. Evelyn Cross, Elena's mentor, dated 50. The title made Elena's breath. Quantum Entangled Twin Conscious. Evidence of non-local awareness following unilateral termination. Dr. Cross studied this. Marcus said quiet. She studied twins where one died. She documented 43 cases of surviving twins experiencing their siblings' death, remembering details they couldn't possibly know. She proposed that twin consciousness doesn't exist in 2 separate brains, but in a single quantum state distributed across both. When one twin dies, the quantum state doesn't collapse, it consolidates in the surviving twin. Elena stared, her mind racing. Why didn't she publish? Why didn't she tell me? Because of what happened. Marcus scrolled to the end of the document. She had a twin sister, Claire, died in a car accident during. Dr. Cross started experiencing exactly what you're describing. The memory, the awareness, the sense of being. She tried to suppress it, tried to sever the connection. Electromagnetic disruption therapy. It worked. She stopped remembering the death, stopped feeling her sister. He looked up at Alina, and there was something like dread, but she also lost something else. Every memory she had of Claire, every moment they'd shared. When she tried to erase the connection, she erased the relation. Her sister didn't just die. She was unmade from Dr. Cross's life entirely, as if she'd never existed. The office felt suddenly cold. Alina thought about Thomas, about 26 years of feeling just beyond perception, always present, always. The idea of erasing, of losing even the awareness, felt like dying. There has to be another. There is, Marcus. We could try to strengthen the connection instead of sever it. Use your the neural pattern, to create, to actually communicate instead of just sense. He hesitated. But Alina, if Dr. Cross was right, if twin consciousness really is quantum, then strengthening that connection emerged. You wouldn't just remember Thomas, you'd experience his entire existence, past, present, and whatever state he's in. You might not come back as yourself. Alina looked at the research, at the data, at the evidence of something impossible that was nevertheless. She thought about all the deaths she'd remembered, all the ending. She thought about Thomas's face on the monitor, those aware eyes staring back at her across the boundary between life and whatever came up. And she made her decision. Set it up, she said. I need to know what he's trying to tell me, even if it costs me everything. The preparation took 3 days. 3 days of Marcus modifying the deep brain stimulation equipment, calibrating the electromagnetic frequencies to match the inverted pattern they'd found in Thomas' neural signal. 3 days of Sarah running simulation, trying to predict what would happen when they amplified a quantum tangle that had persisted for 23 days of Alina trying to ignore the growing sensation that Thomas was getting closer, pressing against the barrier between them with increasing urgency. Dr. Cross came to the lab on the second. Alina hadn't seen her former mentor not since Cross had retired abruptly from MIT, citing health reasons that everyone knew meant mental. She looked older than Alina remembered, her silver hair pulled back severely, deep lines etched around her eyes. But those eyes were sharp, alert, and when they met Alina's, there was a flash of something that looked like seeing a ghost herself. Don't do the Cross without. She stood in the doorway of the lab, refusing to enter, as if the equipment itself posed a threat. Marcus told you what happened, what I lost. Alina nodded. He did, but you chose to sever the I'm choosing to embrace it. You don't understand what your Cross's voice cracked. When I lost Claire, I didn't just lose the memories after. I lost our childhood, our secret, the feeling of never being alone because When I wake up now, I know intellectually that I had it. I can see her in photographs, but I don't. It's like reading about a stranger's life. She took a step closer, her hand trembling. But sometime in dream, I remember what it was like, that certain of another conscious existing in harmony, and losing it was worse than any death I've ever because it wasn't just Claire who died. Part of me died, the part that knew how to be twin. Alina felt the weight of those words, understood the warning beneath, but she also felt Thomas's presence stronger, like a tide rising. She thought about the alternative, living the rest of her life with this half-connection, always sensing it, never truly reaching, slowly going mad from the awareness of something could never fully grasp. I appreciate you coming here, Dr. Cross. I know how hard this must be. Alina moved to the modified stimulation, the crown of electrodes waiting like a terrible. But I've been living in this liminal space for 26 years, always aware, never able to touch that. If there's a chance to finally understand, to finally hear what he's been trying to tell me, I have to take it. Cross studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Resignation, maybe, or recognition of a stubborn she once possessed herself. Then at least let me document what happened. Maybe your experience will answer the questions my fear prevented. The chair was cold against Ellen, the electrodes pressing into her scalp like accusatory. Sarah checked the connections one final time, her hands steady despite the fear in her eye. Marcus stood at the control panel, his finger hovering over the activation. Dr. Cross sat in the corner with a note, her pen poised, ready to document either a breakthrough or a breakdown. Last chance to reconsider Marcus, but his voice lacked. He knew Alina well enough to understand that once she committed to something, especially something dangerous, nothing deterred. Alina closed her eyes and reached inward, feeling for that familiar presence. Thomas was there, closer than ever, like a breath held just before speaking. Do it, she whispered. The first pulse of electromagnetic stimulation felt like ice injected directly to her brain. Alina gasped, her fingers gripping the armrests as the modified frequencies began to resonate with the pattern they'd identified. The inverted signature of consciousness that had refused to For a moment, nothing happened, just the cold. the pressure, the clinical hum of machine. Then the deaths came flooding, not memories, but experiences, simultaneous and over. Catherine Rodriguez's morphine-tinged goodbye. The homeless man's hypothermia. The college student. 47 deaths, all happening at once. Each one a universe of sensation collapsing into her away. Alina wanted to scream, wanted Marcus to shut it down, but her voice had abandoned, and beneath all those deaths, she felt something else stirring, something that had been waiting for exactly Thomas. But not the Thomas she remembered, not the 12-year-old boy who'd drowned. This was something that had been growing for 26 years in a space between exist and She felt him push through the barrier between them, felt the boundaries of her consciousness beginning to dissolve like salt. Alina, your neural activity is spiking. Sarah's voice sounded distant, muffled, as if coming from another dimension. We're a reading pattern we've never seen. It's not just your brain. It's like there are two signals overlapping, interfering. Two signals, two minds, two consciousnesses trying to occupy the same space. Alina felt herself fragmenting, her identity scattering like light. Was she, Alina, the neuroscientist who'd spent her life studying? Or was she, Thomas, who'd been studying life from the other side? The distinction was becoming meaning. Then, impossibly, she heard, not in her ear, but in the deepest part of her awareness, the place where thoughts begin before they become words. Alina, stop fighting. You don't understand. I didn't stay because I was trapped. I stayed because I needed to show you something about what we really are, something about what death really. But you have to let go of who you think you are, just for a moment. Let me show you what I've... The laboratory around her began to fade, replaced by something not dark, not something that existed in the space between perception standing, where consciousness revealed truth. And in that space, Alina finally understood why Thomas had never truly. Alina let go. She released her grip on the identity constructed over 38 years, the carefully maintained boundary between self and other, between Alina and Thomas, between life and death. And in that surrender, she saw consciousness wasn't individual. It had never been. What she'd always thought of as Alina was just one node in an infinite network, a single point of awareness in a vast continuum that connected every mind that had ever. Death didn't end consciousness. It transformed it, redistributed it, allowed it to flow into the larger pattern. Most people experience transformation unconscious, their awareness dissolving so gradually they never noted the transit. But twins were different. Twins shared a quantum entanglement from conception to nodes so closely linked that when one transformed, the other remained tethered to both simultaneously. Thomas hadn't wanted. He'd been trying to wake her up to what they'd all, not two separate, but to expression of the same conscious, experiencing reality from different perspectives. And when he'd drowned, his perspective hadn't ended. It had simply shifted to a state she could perceive. The deaths she'd remembered weren't invasion or psychic phenomena. They were moments when the network became visible, when other nodes of conscious transformed, and she, already partially connected to Thomas expand, could perceive the process. She saw it all spread out before her like a cosmic Catherine Rodriguez, still present, still aware. Her consciousness woven into her daughter's and the memory of every person. The homeless man, his awareness dispersed but not destroyed, flowing into the fabric of the city. The college student merged with the relief it felt, becoming part of the collective understanding of what it meant to go. And Thomas everywhere, in her memories, in her research, in every death, not because he was clinging, but because he'd been trying to show her that existence didn't work the way she thought it. Do you understand now? His voice resonated through her entire being. We were never separate. We will never be. Death is just another of the same conscience. I've been here all along, and I'll be here after your body stops. And you'll be here after mine, because there is no after. There's only the eternal now of awareness, experience itself. Alina felt the laboratory, felt her individual perspective reasserting, but she was chained. The boundaries were still there, but now she understood they were permeable, temporary, ultimately elusive. She opened her eye. Marcus, Sarah, and Dr. Cross stared at, waiting. The monitors showed her neural activity returning to base, but Alina knew the reading. They could only measure the electrical activity in her brain, not the vast awareness she'd touched, not the truth she'd finally. "I'm okay," she said. And for the first time in 26, she meant it complete. Thomas showed me we're not separate. We never were. Dr. Cross leaned forward, tears streaming down. "Can you still feel?" "I can feel everything," Alina replied. "Everyone, all the deaths I remember. They're all still here, part of the pack. And Claire is Doctor. She's in you. She always. You didn't lose her when you severed. You just stopped perceiving. But she's there, woven into every memory, every decision. We're all connected. Death doesn't end. It reveals." 6 months later, Alina stood in front of a small group in her new, speaking to people who'd lost twins, who'd experienced impossible memory, who'd felt the presence of the dead, and been told they were imagined. "You're not crazy. You're awake. And I can help you understand what you're." Her phone buzzed. Be another email from someone with Thomas's neural signature, someone whose twin had died and left them straddling to states of consciousness. Alina smiled. She wasn't alone. None of them. That was the whole point. Outside her office window, the sun set over Cambridge, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. And in the reflection of the glass, just for a moment, Alina saw two faces looking back. Hers and Thomas, not haunted, not separate, just two perspectives of the same infant away, learning to see itself clearly.